House will come back to order. House will come back to order. The chair recognizes the chairman of the Rules Committee, Chairman Meadows, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Bill Rules Committee meeting in 1 minute, 3:41.
What purpose does Chairman Alan Powell rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion that Senate Bill 388 be recommitted to the Rules.
Clerk will read the caption. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 388.
Senate Bill 388 by Representative Lucas, Senator Lucas of the 26th, the bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 27, Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines.
On the gentleman's motion that Senate Bill 388 be recommitted to the Rules Committee, is there objection? Chair hears none, and it's back in the Rules Committee, which I understand is meeting now. We're going to be suspended for about 5 minutes till the Rules Committee completes their meeting. House will come back to order. House will come to order. Mr. Clerk, let's ring the bell and get everybody in here ready to go to work for a little while. Chair recognizes Representative Kelly for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute of House Bill 920.
Clerk will read, Representative Kelly has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 920. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 920 by Representative Kelly, the 16th file of the 171st Fleming of the 121st and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to regulation of hospitals and related institutions.
Chair recognizes Representative Kelly to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 920.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I come before you today with the changes to House Bill 920. There's 4 changes in the language in the bill here. I'd classify every one of them as just some cleanup of the language. The first one takes place on line 27. And really what they did there is, if you look through line 27 through 28, they really just moved the language around to put otherwise, except as otherwise provided at the beginning of the sentence instead of the end. The second change is a change that came from Senator Ligon. He wanted to make sure that it was clear on line 59 that the bad faith provisions apply to both sides of the V, as we talk about in the court system. That would apply to the plaintiff as well as it does to the defendant. On line 73, there's a provision from the majority leader of the Senate that just wanted to make sure that all the other attorney's fees provisions that are awarded that are currently provided in law still exist in this. And then finally on line 95, there's just some cleanup language that makes clear that if a license is revoked for a failure of insurance, they have 60 days to bring it back into compliance. Those are the changes, Mr. Speaker. I'll be glad to yield to any questions.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 920, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 147, the nays are 5. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 920. The chair recognizes the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, Chairman England, for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House agree to the Conference Committee report on House Bill 751.
Chairman England has moved that the House adopt the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 751. The clerk will read the Conference Committee report.
The Committee of Conference on House Bill 751 recommends that both the House of Representatives and the Senate recede from their positions, and that the attached Committee of Conference substitute to House Bill 751 be adopted.
Chair recognizes Chairman England to explain the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 751. the fiscal year 17 state budget. Chairman England.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have before you and have had before you for several hours now the Conference Committee report on House Bill 751. We're not going to walk through it line by line. I'm sure all of you are glad to hear that. But I do want to point out a few things. I want to thank a few folks first. I want to thank our subcommittee chairs again, and our committee as a whole. As you know, we've got 80 plus members on the committee, and I want to thank everybody for the long hours and the work that they've done. I want to thank Martha and Christine and the House Budget Office staff for the work that they do and the many hours that they've put in over the last week and a half or so as we've worked to pull this document together that you have in front of you today. But I also want to thank my counterpart in the Senate, Senator Jack Hill, and his folks there, his budget staff, and the work that they've put into it as well. So let's just roll through some things real quick. I just want to hit some highlights for you and let you know a little bit about some of the changes you're going to see. The Conference Committee report on House Bill 751, as I'd said, had been on the desk for most of the afternoon. So in the essence of time, and I'll not be walking through every change in the document this afternoon. In fact, it's not really even necessary because what you see in front of you this afternoon is basically, for the most part, what left this House back in February. I want to give credit to the governor and his staff, particularly Teresa McCartney, the director of the Office of Planning and Budget, Chief of Staff Chris Riley, for their help in getting all the pieces put together and helping set the tone for a good budget from the beginning. The governor's proposals did not grow big government nor initiate any far-fetched policy proposals, but stayed focused on repurposing funding where our departments are modernizing their services to the families of today and strategically placing any new funds into building stronger foundations in agencies where the systems are working and only need to expand to accommodate the needs of additional populations we are serving today. Immediately, as we discussed back when this was initially before you, we understood that we need to make an investment in our human infrastructure. In 2008, this state government had 81,248 full-time state employees. At the end of this fiscal year, we had 67,690, a 17% decrease, and a direct reflection of a shrinking state government. In fact, the primary few areas we've added back any significant cohorts of personnel have been for the protection of our citizens through public safety, GBI, Child and Adult Protective Services, but we're still below pre-recessionary levels. To end that, state salaries have not increased either, or to that end, state salaries have not increased either. And as the improving economy adds private sector jobs, our turnover rate has risen to an average of 18.4% across state government. Turnover costs us money and costs institutional knowledge as well. So with that, the governor in his initial budget proposed a 3% merit increase, which helps to begin to solidify our investment in personal services side of government operations. This theme is carried on into the Senate, and additional increases up to 10% in some strategically chosen high turnover safety job categories we either sustained or promoted even further. So while House Bill 751, the state's $23.7 billion spending plan, has undergone some changes since it left the House, I think you will agree that the 2.9% or $673.9 million in additional funding from the amended fiscal year has been very meticulously and strategically placed to build on the current and future needs of our state that focus on the quality of life for citizens of Georgia. As a reminder, there is nearly $1 billion, or $995 million, of new revenue for transportation, which remains absolutely intact, other than just a little bit of alignment within the programs. The Department of Education has the largest state appropriation of $8.9 billion, or 37.4% of state funds, And for the first time in a long time, we're seeing the reversal of trends in the state's largest budgeted agencies. 11 departments utilize over 90% of state funding, and this is unchanged. However, in this budget, we see that education budgets, K-12, Regents, TCSG, pre-K, and student finance are using an even larger percentage of funds than in fiscal year 2016, while the portions of state funding to pay debt service, corrections, Medicaid, and others are trending down and using a smaller portion of resources than they did in fiscal year 2016. This shift confirms that we're doing something right. Moreover, as a percentage, 31 of the state's other 56 agencies have stayed flat or declined in spending. Clearly, we're not growing state government. Before I yield for questions, I would like to touch on a handful of significant changes that have been made since your last vote on the bill. In K-12 funding, there's an additional $3.9 for a total of $8 million to fund vocational equipment. In public safety, there's an addition of $3.2 million to instigate a 3-year effort to increase to at least near market rate salaries for post-certified law enforcement officers in DNR, GBI, and public safety. And while we've been looking at that as an FY18 issue, as we noted earlier about the turnover rate within the state agencies, we realized that this was something we needed to try to move up a little bit. So working with the governor, we wanted to go on and make that move in this budget, if at all possible. The biggest adjustments in Health and Human Services are the inclusion of a 9% base salary increase for public health nurses, an increase of 42 slots to the 125 slots the House provided for home and community-based waivers, and $200,000 for a physician assistant and advanced practical nurse loan repayment program. Finally, in economic development, we shifted $10 million from One Georgia over to Invest Georgia for potential project investments through the ATDC, or otherwise known as the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech. Having all three parties, meaning the governor, the House, and the Senate, working together to address the same issues has made this conference committee one of the most cohesive conference committees that I've experienced. I want to thank our conferees from the House, John Burns and Jan Jones, for their invaluable perspective and input. I also want to tell you that how much I appreciate the incredible working relationship we've shared with our Senate Appropriations Chairman, Jack Hill, and his staff as well. We've worked many 12-hour days and weekends, not in contention, but to ensure that we had applied every dollar of this precious new revenue into functions that support families, reinforce education opportunities, and make Georgia a safe state to live in. I'm proud to stand here before you right now and tell you that we have been successful. And we have done this while spending no more per capita than we did in 1998, nearly 20 years later. Again, thank you to our staff, thank you to our committee, thank you especially to my subcommittee chairs for the work that they've done and just the moral support that they've given me and coming by and checking on me every once in a while to make sure that at least eating some peanut butter crackers or something to sustain nourishment. But it's always a challenge, but it is a fun process as well. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I'll be glad to try to field any questions. I know that Martha and Christine have both been in the anteroom for the last several hours answering questions, but I'll be glad to answer any if there are some.
And the chair wants to thank them for their patience and answering questions of members all afternoon. It was very helpful. You know what? You don't appear to have any questions.
Well, Mr. Speaker, with that, I will yield the well, and I would appreciate a yes vote on the conference committee report for House Bill 751. Thank you.
On the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 751, all those in favor of the adoption of the conference committee report will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 751. The ayes are 171, the nays are 1, and the conference committee report is adopted. I hope y'all will help me give a big hand to our House Budget Office staff for their great work. The chair recognizes the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Powell, for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 899.
Chairman Powell has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 899. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 899 by Representative Powell, the 171st England, and the 116th Burns, and the 159th, and others, being entitled an act to amend Chapter 13 and 13A of Title 10 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to tobacco product manufacturers and master settlement agreement enhancements.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 899. If you gentlemen will suspend. We are taking up some important measures. This
Thank you, Mr.
House will
Speaker.
be in order. This House will come to order. Gentlemen may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 899, if you'll recall, was the tobacco settlement amendment that we provided that there would be a stricter escrow requirement in our current settlement documents. And the only thing that happened in the Senate was the Attorney General's office brought us some additional language, which we requested the Senate substitute, which was adopted by the Senate. And all it did was change some of the joint and several liability that would have attached to some of the persons that sell tobacco in our state. And that's all it does, Mr. Speaker.
You have no questions? On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 899, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 899, the ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute. House will come to order. We had one or two morning orders that we carried over from this morning, and the chair recognizes at this time for a morning order Representative B.J. Pack. Representative Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House. You know, I used to get nervous every time I come up here, despite the fact that I've given hundreds of speeches and closing arguments. I wanted to start my talk today with an obituary that I've read recently, and those of you are familiar with a former state senator named Mike Egan. And if you look at his obituary, I noticed something, as in any kind of description, when you describe someone's term, as a legislature or their life, you have a year where they started or they're born and the year they end. And in between, you have this little hyphen or a dash. When you look at an obituary, it's kind of interesting because the beginning and the end is really not important. That little hyphen, the time period that that person spends during his life is what makes the most difference. And as I end my legislative career and as a member of this distinguished House, I think about the dash between my years of service. I was elected in 2011, 2010. I started serving in 2011, and I'll finish out my term in January of 2017. And then when I first walked in here, the majesty and the impressiveness of this chamber kind of overtook me. The reason being is, it's merely 31 years ago, I was a young boy in South Korea, and those of you who may know me know that I was born in South Korea. My family and I were living in a 2-bedroom basement apartment without running hot water. And I sit here before you 3 decades later. I've come a long way from a young kid who did not know a single word of English except for coffee and elevator, because that's what they spoke in Korea as well. And I stand here before you as an immigrant, maybe a testament to what an American dream is. When I first came to the United States, I flew actually, and I connected through Anchorage, Alaska. So my first view of America, with my own eyes, were the apex and the beautiful mountains of Mount Denali. So the impression that left on me is how great this country is, how majestic that it is. It's from humble beginnings that I rose through the opportunities that this country has given to me. From my father, who had started out bagging groceries and washing dishes at night, to support our family of 5. Now I'm thinking, I'm a practicing attorney here. I generally make money by typing words on a piece of paper and using my mind. How blessed that I am. And the reason I start with that story is not to be nostalgic about it, but I think it's a testament to how great our country is and how lucky that we are to be citizens of this great state and of our country. A lot of people when growing up asked me, are you glad that you immigrated? I really didn't have a choice because I was a young kid. I was immigrated. What do you think your life would have been had you not come to the United States? I'll tell you one thing, I have no idea, but I'll tell you one thing, I had never would have dreamed that I'd be standing here addressing you. The fact of the matter is, my story is not that unique. I know that many of you, those of you I've gotten to know, also come from humble beginnings. And to reach the pinnacle of political career, it's a great privilege and an honor to be a state representative. Although I haven't been here very long, I have served 6 years and 3 terms. So I can't give you any piece of advice that I've gained or wisdom, but what I can do is provide you my parting wishes. Just as that story reminds us and reminds you of where you come from and how hard you worked, my first wish for you, my colleagues, is to stay humble. I found that the longer you stay here, the longer you walk the halls of this Capitol, somehow your jokes get funnier by the year. Somehow more and more people, and you get used to people calling you representative. And I say that to remind you that the seat that you hold is not your seat, but the people's seat. People ask me, well, you've served 3 terms, why are you leaving? I ask you, that's the wrong question to ask. Every time you requalify, I think it's important to ask yourself, why are you running again? The reason I flip the question is, It focuses on you and your reasons for serving and offering yourself to serve. Humility is something that's very, very important to the citizens and the work that we do. So my first wish for you is to stay humble. Second, please be tolerant and listen to the dissenting view. I'll tell you a story I bet you no one has told in this well. Many of you are history buffs, and I'll tell you a little about the Korean history. There was a famous king in Korea called Sejong who created the Korean language out of thin air. He is by far known as the best king ever in Korea, and I think the world had ranked him in near the top best rulers. In his cabinet, he had a very interesting post, a cabinet member. First, I found it kind of interesting that historians, even back then, several thousand years ago, kept the number of times the king lost his temper. That's kind of interesting, right? So they would have this king reign from, 15-something to 16-something and lost his temper 23 times, something like that. But more importantly, King Sejong actually had a cabinet member that, if you translate the language, turns out to be the devil's advocate. Someone who was specifically designed to challenge everything the king does and to question the wisdom of the decision the king was making. The reason I bring that up, and these are studied in management books in Asia, is because there's value in having your views challenged. And of course, the king saw that, and as leaders in your community and in this chamber, I ask you to open your hearts and your minds to the dissenting view. I will guarantee you, I think it would result in better policy, in better leadership, and better future for our state. Let's not be afraid to debate. I wish for you that we had a great debate like we just had about an hour ago. I wish for you that you do not yield the whale when there's questions pending. Because I do think that your policies and bills that we pass should be challenged and evaluated on the merits, not to shy away from tough questions while it's being broadcast. So I wish for you is to be tolerant of dissenting view. Lastly, I wish that you have patience and be diligent. All of us will leave this chamber one of these days, but what will remain are the words that we draft and we adopt in legislation and the statutes. A lot of folks they dread coming to Judiciary Committee because you don't want to get your bill picked apart by lawyers. But words do matter, and let me put a plug for fellow lawyers. I'll tell you a story. 3 years ago, there was a bill coming through the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee where it was being torn apart by a lot of the lawyers on the committee. And those of you who've been to Judy Non-Civil know that we take it seriously. Every comma, every word, every period, every preposition. During the debate on one of the bills related to sex trafficking, child sex exploitation, I put in a word because I foresaw a scenario where it could be interpreted wrong. I didn't think of that big of a deal at the time. I just thought it would be a good drafting thing. And 2 years later, I actually got an email from a legislative aide that was following this piece of legislation. And this person just emailed me out of the blue and said, "You remember that when you inserted that one word into that statute? Guess what? The Supreme Court decided its ruling based on that word." And I said to myself, oh my goodness, words do matter, what we do here. Well, I understand that no bill is going to be perfect, but it's our duty to try to get as perfect as possible. Yes, time is short. We only have 40 legislative days to do our work. But please remember and be diligent, because every word that we put in the code matter. And if you don't really believe that, think about the press coverage of the bill we passed last week. I love this House and the people who serve in it, and I think that's what I'm going to miss the most. But I had a little bit of, frankly, I had a little bit of a rough start, and I'll tell you why. Those of you who started with me in our class of 2011, we were assigned house mentors. Do we still do that, Mr. Speaker? The mentor that I was assigned, believe it or not, was Representative Tom Weldon. And I hate to tack on, but Mr. Weldon, he has been one of the best mentors, and the reason why, because he was not only my mentor in the House and learning the procedures, but he was also my friend. He came from North Georgia. We both did, our backgrounds are so different, other than the fact that we're lawyers. But I'll tell you one thing I share with Chairman Weldon is his passion for his family and the law. I will also miss several people who gave me guidance, just random guidance. Those of you may recall that I took a gamble when I was my first month as a legislator and tried to amend the bill on the floor. I didn't even know what the procedure was. I was scrambling everywhere, and there were several people who actually stepped up to try to help me. And I probably never told you the story. There are a couple people I want to acknowledge that had a deep impression on me. The first is Alan Peake. He actually sent me a text message encouraging me and trying to guide me through some of the process. And the other person, you would have never thought it, is Jimmy Pruitt. And I know that you guys are just good, kind-hearted folks. Even though it may be a losing cause sometimes, I know you're passionate, you understand that it's your duty to teach the younger legislators how to do things right. And I will certainly miss your kindness. I will also miss Chairman Reinders, the fact that he only speaks in parables and questions. See, I gave you a shout out like last time. But you have to understand that Chairman Reinders' is intellect and his political savvy and his desire to do the right thing. And to my seatmates, you'll probably get surprised. D. Hawkins Hagler, Pam Stevens, Joyce Chandler, she's not here right now, and my wife's sitting over there. Jan Tankersley was my seatmate and my suitemate. I was surrounded by ladies, apparently, and I am surrounded by ladies because my wife and my 3 daughters are here with me. I will miss all the conversation despite the fact that we may not agree on policy. I know that all our hearts in the right place as we vote on legislation. Now, I want to especially thank the people of District 108, formerly District 102. When I first started running for office, I even doubted whether or not someone who looked like me would be able to be elected by a district that's not majority, minority, or Asian. Of course, they proved that wrong, and they gave me the special privilege to represent them in this House for over 6 years. I want to thank the Speaker for giving me the opportunity to serve on great committees with great responsibility and the ability to influence, or at least try to, add my 2 cents into your legislation. I want to thank Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones for all the guidance and the encouragement that you've given me over the years, and the 2 whips I served under. Matt Ramsey here, I'll miss you, but I know that we'll continue to talk outside the Capitol. Also, Ed Lindsay, he's not here, but I have tremendous respect for former Representative Lindsay for his intellect and his attention to detail. My Gwinnett delegation and my special friends that I consider to be close with, especially Brett, who's actually my suitemate and my next door neighbor in terms of district. He has had to put up with me for a very, very long time, particularly me being a lawyer. I know you got sick and tired of that from time to time. Buzz Brockway, I always valued your wisdom and your advice. And Chairman Tom Rice, who's leaving the House, I will always miss your wisdom and your advice on many, many things, including life. Chairman Sharon Cooper, she's probably surprised by this. I don't know if she's here. I was practically a thorn in her side, being one of 2 lawyers on the Health and Human Services Committee until Trey Kelly got appointed. as a lawyer, I pick apart a lot of bills in that committee, but I know that I respect and love the passion that Chairman Cooper brings to that committee. And out of the committees, last but not least, Chairman Golick, thank you for giving me the responsibility early on to do things that I probably was not, like Representative Ramsey said, probably not ready for. The way you run your committees is something to marvel at, and I'm pretty sure that it's a reflection of what kind of legislator you are and a leader that you are, that the Speaker, when he ascended into the speakership, chose you to follow him. And my family, my daughters who are sitting here playing video games. I want to tell a story that my girls are into a Star Wars kick. They watched all episode 1 through 7, and they absolutely love Star Wars. And this is my second child, Madeline, walking right here. And I made the mistake of asking them after watching Star Wars which Star Wars character that I represent, that I think most closely resemble. I said Han Solo, he's pretty cool, Luke Skywalker, and then Maddie, of course, blurted out Jabba the Hutt. I tell that story because your children and your family members are the ones that keep you humble. No matter how big your head gets, they will tell you and they'll bring you back to earth. Let me, My girls are a little too young, but this is going to be recorded. Let me talk to you for a second. If there's one thing that I hope to teach you through my service in the House, is that the opportunities and privileges you have is a debt that you must repay through public service, working for others, and loving your neighbor. And finally, my wife, who, by the way, she campaigned with me throughout my political career, and she was like the best door-to-door canvasser ever. First of all, thank you for not primarying me, because you would have beat me hands down. But more importantly, you actually are the one that reminds me of the 3 F's, the importance in life: faith, family, and friends. And I definitely can't do this without you. And I want to thank you, and I love you. Now, as I'm completing my dash, I guess, between my years of service, I want to tell you that this is really not a goodbye, because I don't really like goodbyes. I feel like this is merely a farewell. And I think there's an important distinction there, because despite the fact that I may not be sitting next to you voting, pushing those green or red buttons, I could tell you I look forward to going back being a citizen, which in turn means I'm your boss, and looking forward to supporting you in all of your endeavors. And most importantly, I will pray for you. And I ask that you do the same for me. God bless you. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Dudgeon for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the opportunity to come down here today and give my goodbye speech. Number one, I want to say I don't want to be here today. I really did not want to leave this house. When I started here in 2010, my business had 30 employees, and my job there was kind of a sleepy consultant role. Now Hi-Rise Studios has 230. We're one of the fastest growing video game companies in the country, and it requires 100% of my time. Last session, I worked 7 days a week for 3 months in a row. Saturday, Sunday after church, pretty much like I've added it up 90 days in a row. My wife and my business partners, rightfully so, and myself can't do that. So number one, I want to say, if there was any way for me not to be here saying goodbye, I would have taken it. So I want to say thanks to some people and leave you, of course, with my words of advice, because that's something fun to do. First, something you may not know about me is that my entire family are Democrats up and down the spectrum. Cousin, aunts, uncles, I got some applause here. In fact, my cousin was a clerk for the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on the Supreme Court. And he is to the left of, I think, almost anybody even in this chamber. So I grew up in a household of, I was the Alex Keaton from Family Ties scenario. But my point in that is one thing I love about this body is that we sit together and that 99% of the time we're getting along really good as Democrats and Republicans. And so I'm going to talk about some of my Democratic friends and some of my Republican friends. I had 6 years in a suite with Bob Bryant, and it still breaks my heart that we lost him so soon. He's such a great man. I learned from Kathy Ash as a freshman how to dissect a bill in education. Appreciate that. I worked on school choice with Alicia Thomas Morgan. Miss her. My friend Miss Carla Drenner is one of my fellow scientist-minded people working on solar issues. I love working here on the science things. There are not many of us who are science-minded. Miss Margaret Kaiser, hopefully the new mayor of Atlanta perhaps, but loved working with her on education issues. Minority leaders helped me. One time I got beat up in rules as a freshman, and she helped me. She probably didn't remember that, gave me some advice about how not to get beat up. She was the one beating me up, but she was right, and she gave me some good advice about it. And then to turn to some of my Republican friends, and it's an amazing thing, Matt said this morning about how you get to see people from all over the state that you would never see otherwise. I mean, I've become really good friends with a gospel singing, chicken farming, UGA super athlete from Carrollton, Kevin Cook. Who would have thought that when I came here, the nerdy computer guy from Georgia Tech would become friends with that, and that's the great thing about this place. This year, or last year, I got put on the new Appropriations Committee with Miss Penny, and got to know a wonderful Southern lady in Miss Penny. I've sat next to Miss Sharon Cooper for 6 years and got to know her, and she's a wonderful person, and just those connections you make here that are great. I've got a lot of close friends here, and you know who you are, and I really appreciate you, though. I'm going to quote Harry Truman for a minute. Harry Truman said, when you get into politics, you want a friend, get a dog. It's probably true most of the time, but I will say that my friends Sam Teasley and Buzz Brockway, they're not a dog. They're my friends, and all of you are my friends, but us three have a bond that's been amazing, and I appreciate you so much. And last but certainly not least is my friend Brooks Coleman. I swear to you, I would rather be Vice Chairman of Education forever here with Brooks Coleman than any other leadership position in this body. I've had so much fun, and we've been such a good team working together the past several years. I will miss that very, very, very much. So that's sort of my friendship role, and then of course you gotta have fun with advice, and I already started that, and I tried to have fun with it. I put my parable of the monkeys on your desk the other day, and that's not about politics. That's actually poking fun at corporate America, where businesses do the same things over and over again when they came in. But I think that applies in politics too. We do a lot of things when we come in that we're just doing because everybody's always done them before. And I'll be honest, when I first came in, I said, oh my gosh, all these things we do, all these procedures, it's crazy. The speaker's crazy, everybody's crazy. But as you've been here long enough, you realize, the vast majority of things we do here are because that's how it works. And so I really give a lot of people a lot more credit. But there's two things I want to lift up to you to do better. And remember, I'm a technology guy. If I do the same thing 3 years ago that I'm do the same thing from 3 years ago now, I'm out of business. I'm always about change, so that's in my soul. So number one I would lift up is these little printouts here you get from the printer over here with votes, where people go after bills and circle no's and seek out revenge. I would lift up to you that when we were freshmen and we came here to this chamber as a new representative, that's not what we thought we came here to do. I think that's a learned behavior. I think we are monkeys in the cage on that one. I think in the vast majority of cases, we can leave that alone. And I think it would make this a much healthier culture. And I would encourage you to do that as I leave. Number two is that I understand that we have a lot of last minute stuff. We're just like high school students. We'll do all our business the night before the deadline. I get that very much. But the stacks of papers on our desk every year are really, they're too much. And if the average voter saw that that was how we were doing our business, I don't think they'd be very happy. I know there's going to be a lot of that, but I think we can do better there. And I actually want to give a shout out to the speaker because compared to the day 40 when I first got here, every day 40 has been better. And I think, you know, again, it's not going to be perfect, but I'd like to encourage people to try. And two more people I'm going to thank, and then I'll give my final words. I do want to thank the speaker. I've had private conversations with him. Being a leader of this kind of body is extraordinarily difficult to make those final decisions. I've done it in business, but not obviously in that chair. And no matter whether you agree or disagree, I appreciate him offering himself up for that leadership, and I've appreciated his leadership these 6 years. And second is the pro tem. She kind of took me under her wing. When I showed up here, I was kind of her pet in her office during the charter school fight in 2012, and I got to sit at the big boy table as Senator Rogers came in and people from the governors, they were negotiating the big charter bill, and she kind of let me watch that and do some errands for her and help me become a better legislator, so I appreciate that as well. So what happens now? That's a good question. Like I said, I don't really want to be here. I'm 48 years old. As I tell people, I'm not dead. I don't know what God has in store for me in politics in the future. You never know. But it's about service, and that's my last word. I came here with a heart for service. I found Brooks Coleman as a freshman who really didn't even know who I was, and I said, Brooks, what can I do to help you? I went to a study committee that I wasn't even on and said, what can I do to help you? My second year, I went to Terry England, and he gave me a big, giant equalization bill, which was a very complicated thing that made a lot of people mad because we moved money around, and I did that for this chamber. And I think that all of us need to realize you want to work for the state of Georgia, not necessarily yourself. What are you doing for your constituents, and what are you doing for you? Because it really is about service. And lastly, they're not here. They're all busy tonight, but my boys have been great. My wife, Lori, has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to spending a little bit more time with her, even though I'll still be busy in business. But I'm not sure what God has in store for me. My business will take my time for the next few years, but I do intend to come back, and I will come back next year to help out with technology. I told Brooks to give him a couple days to look over his shoulder and talk about bills, and like we've done for the past several years. And like I said, all the technology goodies I've done, I intend to try to come back and help with those, if y'all will help me. And as far as politics in general, I'm not really sure. But I love all y'all guys. It's been an unbelievable honor. I never thought that a nerdy computer guy from Georgia Tech would be in the House and have a 10-year political career at least. But I love all of y'all, and I will be back, and I'll yield the well.
We're going on now to the supplemental rules calendar. Supplemental rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 323.
Senate Bill 323 by Senator Dugan of the 30th, Jackson of the 24th, Miller of the 49th, Martin of the 9th, and others. Be entitled an act to amend Chapter 18 and Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state printing and documents so as to provide for public disclosure not to be required for any documents pertaining to an economic development project by any agency. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs. That committee recommends this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Dickey to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tough couple of people to follow there, but we've got a short little bill 323 that updates some legislation we passed a few years ago for the Georgia Department of Economic Development when they're in negotiation with businesses to come here in the part of their economic development recruitment, and a little open records time frame where they can keep those negotiations from our competitors in other states But with work with the Georgia Press Association, those records will be immediately made available as soon as those negotiations are over. And so this bill simply extends those protections to other state agencies where they may come into play, such as DCA, our technical colleges, and those type things. So this is just simply an update. It's a transparency bill as well, and that is really all this bill does. And Representative Earnhardt has a substitute to go along with it, and I'll take.
Don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Earhart to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is just a short amendment. This is from the old and washed up Rules Chairman, Calvin Smyrie, and I'm speaking for myself, Representative Smyrie, on the washed up side, just the older side. This tracks what they're doing in the Department of Economic Development. You too, Representative Williams. It just allows for appropriate time frame with respect to our athletic associations to respond fully to open records requests. We're certainly not asking for an exception of any sort, just an extended time. We want to put ourselves on the same playing field as all the other states. This will help the startup programs. This applies to every single intercollegiate program in the state, every university from the University of Georgia to any intercollegiate sport at a D2, D3 school. It just allows us to play in the same field as Alabama and everybody else, that at that recruiting time of year, they get absolutely inundated with people wanting to have that recruiting information, and it's not a level playing field because Georgia, our athletic associations are private in and of themselves, and they don't have that capacity. So this just allows that type of level playing field. Mr. Speaker, I will yield to one.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection? We have an amendment. We have an amendment to Senate Bill 323. It's the Earhart-Smyrie-Rogers Amendment, AM 25-1383. The clerk will read the amendment.
The amendment is offered by Representative Earhart of 36, Smyrie the 135th, and Rogers the 10th. AM 25-1383 has been printed and distributed. It's on your desks.
Is there any objection to adopting the amendment? Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 323 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 323. The ayes are 166, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 168.
Senate Bill 168 by Senator Jones, the 25th, and Harper, the 7th, to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state symbols, so as to designate the old Governor's Mansion as the official state historic house. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Wilkinson to present the bill.
Oh, it's not on? There we go. Thank you. The green was on. As you all recall, I presented the Adoptable Dog Bill a number of weeks ago, House Bill 561. It passed this House 172 to 0. We received incredible positive media coverage all over the world. And it's led to many adoptions and in doing exactly what we wanted to do, to drive people to bring animals into their homes. You will recall there are 500,000 stray animals every year in the state of Georgia. They cost $10 to $40 a day. Local governments, pound shelters, and so forth. So this is an opportunity to save a lot of money at the local level. It also, I think it's important to realize, because that was one of the questions in the Senate, 40% of animals in shelters are purebreds. And this also promotes the American Kennel Club breeders and leading more business to them. The author of the original Senate bill called and told me he wanted this bill to be used as the vehicle to pass the Adoptable Dog Act. He said his wife and children and constituents said, you better get this thing passed. So this, we're sending back the Adoptable Dog Act, and I would appreciate your support. Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do not have any questions.
Thanks, sir. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Kidd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen in the House, I'm not opposed to the adoptable dog. I was one of the ones who voted for it, and I support that. My concern is that when I talked to the author of this bill, which is my state senator, he thought the adoptable dog was going to be added to his bill, not that his language is going to be totally stripped out. What the original bill said, if you look at it in your book, it said that the governor's mansion in Milledgeville, Georgia, which was the first governor's mansion in the state, where 3 governors resided years and years ago, would be called the historic house. Now, here in Georgia, we've got the Cherokee Rose, we've got the brown thrasher, we got the right whale, we got the song Georgia on my mind, we got the state butterfly, the state bumblebee, and now I support the adoptable dog. But I'm opposed to stripping all the language out and not considering the old governor's mansion in Milledgeville that the state pays for to pay to upkeep and so forth, that housed 3 governors, not being considered the historic house in Georgia. So I urge you to support the bill, but I hope it comes back from the Senate with other language on it, because when I spoke with Senator Jones a little while ago, he thought the adoptable dog was going to be added to this, not the governor's mansion stripped out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Gentleman has yielded the well. What purpose does Chairman Wilkinson rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true there seems to be some confusion because the senator came to me and said that he would not be at all, he would not object at all to this the language of the mansion being removed because he would go back and try to do it next year.
If the chairman of the Ethics Committee so states, I'm sure that he believes that to be true, and great weight would be accorded to that. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There's a floor substitute. Is there any objection to adopting the floor substitute? The chair hears none. The floor substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 168 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 168, the ayes are 168. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senator Bethel, 54, Schaefer the 48th, Cowser the 46th, Henson the 41st, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 33-24-59.10 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance coverage for autism, so as to provide for certain insurance coverage of autism spectrum disorders. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Insurance, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Blackman to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the committee. Here to present Senate Bill 1, which has previously been referred to as House Bill 838. Remember it before this body. Should have a copy in front of you. It relates to these health insurance plans and compensation being provided to independent insurance agents so that they can provide service to their small business and individuals. I would note that on lines 36 and 37, there is one change which actually removes any payment or compensation to an agent who is already compensated by a carrier. Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to yield any questions if there are any.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you, sir. I ask for your favorable consideration. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 1 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 1. The ayes are 150, the nays are 11. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 258. Senate Bill 258.
Senate Bill 258 by Senator Miller, the 40th, and Albers, the 56th, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-5-311 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the creation of county boards of equalization, duties, review of assessments, and appeals. This bill having referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Duncan to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here to present to you Senate Bill 258, authored by Senator Fran Miller. This started as a simple little bill, and we've added a few lines to it. Senate Bill 258 allows, when a property tax is appealed, what it says is it locks into place and doesn't allow that to actually be increased. So the only result could either be the property tax stays the same or it is lowered. We've included three other bills: House Bill 990, House Bill 862, and House Bill 919. All three received broad support here in the House over the last few weeks. House Bill 990 allows for a 3-year freeze to be in place if a property tax is appealed. House Bill 862 eases the definition for veterans to allow them to qualify for a homestead exemption. And last but not least, House Bill 919. This is a bill that I carried, the Rural Health Care Bill. It left this body with a tremendous amount of support. It did not receive that same support once it got to the Senate. Through a lot of hard work from a lot of folks in this room and around the state of Georgia, we have gotten a lot of support over on that side of the body. We hope to bring that bill back up there shortly for their approval. Just to rehash a little bit about what 919 does, this rural health care bill, because I know a number of you have received input from your local hospitals and your administrators and from your communities. This is an opportunity for us to be able to, in Georgia, to lead a national conversation. So many states have rural health care problems, much like ours, but this allows us to laser focus tax dollars directly to rural hospitals and allows our communities to participate in their own health care system. What we're seeing is corporations and citizens already wanting to step up to the plate. I'm going to mention one example from Representative Werkheiser that he had brought to my attention just an hour or so ago. He received a call from his hospital that is so concerned that this bill was not going to get passed because a local corporation in his district has already reached out to that hospital and said that they were ready to step up to the plate and to write a check to solve all of the debt that they've got at their hospital, which is almost insurmountable at this point. So the crux of this bill is that we want to leverage churches, charities, corporations, and citizens to solve the issues around poverty. I think we as a body, on both sides of the aisle, regardless of what part of the state you're from, I think we all will agree that government is never going to solve the issues around poverty by itself. We need to leverage churches, charities, corporations, and citizens to help us get over the hump. Mr. Speaker, with that, I will answer any questions.
You do not appear to have any questions.
Thank you very much, and I ask for your favorable consideration on Senate Bill 258.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 258 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 258. The ayes are 153, the nays are 15. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. This House will be in recess for dinner until 7:30 p.m.